All right. Hi, this is Kurt Barone,
And Brad Pinsky.
and we are here for another edition of File Law Roundup for April 28th. Is it the
28th.
28th
Yep.
of 2025? Brad, go ahead.
Well, today you get like a 10 fur, not a 5 fur, but a 10 fur. As those who read Kurt's blog will see, we started with kind of a very short summary of a lot of really short cases, but I'm going to blow through the first five really quickly. But one of them super important. In any event, Charleston, we have the firefighter was is going to be paid $80,000 for losing his hearing. I can't believe it's only $80,000. It must be a decrease in hear loss. It can't be absolute hear loss. In either event,
Do you remember the
um,
case? Do you remember the case? We talked about it,
yeah,
where
yeah.
he claims he had been harassed, and then apparently, like happens from time to time in firehouses, somebody puts some firecrackers under his bunk, and he's claiming that he's got hearing loss associated with that. So,
Right. And then he was claims he was pressured not to report the incident.
yeah.
And it's interesting because the report they call it explosives. Is it
Yeah, it's
fireworks, which are
fireworks, but
explosive,
come
but
on,
still.
it's fireworks. But let me ask you this: couldn't that be assault?
Oh my God, of course
Yeah,
it could
you
be.
know. So I mean, the guy, when you're thinking about pranks, you got to know who you can prank and who you can't.
Yeah.
And there are people that just don't have that sense of humor. And when you do things like this could have gone criminal.
Assault with a deadly weapon. I mean, some of those, like, the Black Cat M80s, right, from July 4th, we know these, they'll blow your hand off, right? So
So
they put it under his mattress, allegedly. So in any
yeah.
event, don't do stupid stuff like that.
Well,
That's just,
if you're going to do stupid things, make sure you know the audience and that the audience is going to be able to handle it. And I'll go back to the metaphor I use in a lot of my classes is we have Mrs. Smith lives in a fire-resistant building and it's concrete walls, concrete floor, concrete roof, all that. And Mrs. Jones lives in a lightweight wood truss building. And we owe both of them a duty, but we realize we can't
treat
do
them
the
the same.
same things in both of those
Right.
buildings. You just can't. It's not realistic. When it comes to people, we've got to kind of realize that there are people who live in lightweight wood truss, the equivalent, the metaphorical equivalent of a lightweight wood truss building. And yes, we treat everybody the same. Yes, we treat everybody fairly, but there's people that can handle that kind of brotherly love that firefighters tend to give each other from time to time. And there's people that can't. And from the allegations in the lawsuit, there were a series of these
Yeah.
incidents.
But when you
And
when you cross to something that damages your hearing, we've
yeah,
gone way,
absolutely. Yeah.
right, way over the tolerance
Well,
line.
and again, I go back to what you said. $80,000 is not compensation for permanent hearing loss. So
Right.
it's a little bit more than nuisance value, but it
Yeah.
certainly doesn't compensate someone for permanent hearing loss.
Right.
So
Okay, and then in Houston, there's twelve recruits. Let me repeat that. 12 recruits dismissed from the Fire Academy for making racist and harmful posts on Instagram. 12. Now, I don't know if some of these are likes, right? I don't know anything more than what you have, but
when you're on
Jesus.
probation, right? When my son Matt was in the police academy, he drove like a kid before he got in the police academy, and they told him in the police academy that any contact you have, whether you get a ticket or not, whether you're arrested or not, any contact you have with any police officer, you report it the next day at the academy, and you could be terminated if you didn't. He was driving, I hate to use a metaphor here, but driving like an old lady. If the speed limit's 50, he's at 40. To the point where people are passing him. We're going out to dinner. I'm going, Matt, what's going on? Right. So when you're in the academy,
Right.
you know, you got to
Watch your
use your
six. I
head.
mean, yeah. I don't I think part of it though is, people don't get that the academy is very militaristic, not just paramilitaristic, militaristic. And people, I don't know whether all academies do this or not, but some academies start with understanding respect. Chief, lieutenant, sir, yes, sir, how you address people, and to understand, like, you're not at home with all your nice liberties that you can say and do whatever you want. And maybe people just don't grow up understanding that. I don't know, but 12 people. It's
Yeah,
insane.
that's
Okay, so New Jersey. Now I really don't understand this. I'm sure there's more, but during COVID, this fire company, Flemington Fire, lost their IRS 501c3 or C4 designation. And I don't really understand why it's taken this long to get it back. It was out of an error. They thank the senator for helping them. And so I'm not demeaning or, saying anything like that. I don't understand it. Typically, we do, I don't know, a tax exempt application every other week,
Mhm.
pretty much. I mean, that's what, Nicole and some of our divisions do. And I don't understand why it took 6 years to get
Mhm.
it back. That I would have just applied, gotten it back, and then worry about the redate, the backdating. But in any event, I guess kudos
Yeah,
to
yeah.
getting it.
So it's unfortunate, but yeah.
Yep.
But again, what I'm trying to do here is capture a lot of the different types of legal things that come up, and this is one of them. That if you're a
Oh yeah.
volunteer fire company and you're not affiliated with a local government, you're an independent, you got to make sure that you're squared away with the IRS.
And I'll tell you, so we do. My firm does a tremendous amount of tax exempt work, right? And files. I don't know. We probably file over 100 tax returns a year for fire departments and ambulances easily. And we probably do 20 or 30, yeah, probably 20 or so tax exempt applications each year.
Mhm.
And I will tell you, we do more applications for a second time. I'll explain that than a first time. So right now, if you don't file a Form 990 with the IRS for 3 consecutive years, you lose your 501c status. And so you have to file tax returns. And by the way, everyone, if you don't know whether you're filing them or not, it's on GuideStar, GuideStar, GuideStar.org or com. I always forget. In any event, and you can see all of it. But you will be revoked if you don't file for 3 years. We have more fire companies that they contact us back like, oh, we didn't have you do our, tax exempt, our tax returns. We should have. We never filed them. We thought we were, and we lost our status again. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, how many times are we going to lose our status? But this is not uncommon. Not uncommon.
Yeah.
And maybe it was an error in this case, but please, if you're a corporation, not for profit, non-stock, whatever you want to call, make sure you're filing your 990s or you got to pay taxes. I mean, everyone thinks, oh, we're exempt. Because you're a not for profit does not make you at state level, does not make you exempt from income tax with the IRS. Two totally different things. Okay. Jacksonville, Florida. We
Yeah,
have a
this is
district chief under investigation for allegedly coercing a Muslim firefighter to break his fast. I don't even know how to comment on that. Is it like
yeah,
a
I wonder if the chief didn't understand the cultural, like he wasn't really what I think the new term is cultural competence. But he didn't understand the ramifications of it. I can almost see the fact pattern where it happens. But boy, this can obviously you can see what's happened down there and how it's gotten outside the department into, some of the community groups and beyond. And
and I'm making this up, but look, Jews have Yom Kippur, right? I mean, there's a lot of religions that fast, but here's my thing. I never went into the firehouse on Yom Kippur, right? If I'm fasting, you probably are in temple, but now Ramadan's different, right? It's not
yeah,
a
it's a long
day,
period of time,
right?
right?
Long period of time.
Yeah.
But shouldn't we be accommodating
Mhm.
individuals who are fasting? It is not safe to be fighting fires and fasting.
Yes.
So if the coercion, right? I don't
And
know
that, and
anything
that
about
may
this
be
case.
that may be the and in addition to the fasting of eating, there's the drinking of water as well. And that, especially in a place like Florida, now I know it's
Yeah,
not the warmest part of the year that this is taking place, but
still.
yeah, and so what happens if you're at a working fire and you go through a couple of bottles and you go to rehab and I don't know,
I,
but again, it looks like there was not cultural sensitivity. At least the allegations, anyway, are. So,
We'll see more, but it's an interesting issue, right? I've never
Mm.
even thought about the issue. It's never come up in my practice. I haven't seen a
Yes.
story where we're telling people, listen, you have to fast, don't come to work. I don't know. And again, I don't know if that's what's happening. I'm just thinking I'd be saying that something like, you can't come to work. We'll
Well,
accommodate you, we'll give you another, but if you're not eating,
yeah, I was thinking
that's not safe.
more along the lines where maybe the chief was the cook that day or whatever, or possibly the other firefighters are complaining, "Hey, we bought this. It's $15. Bought everybody a steak. Or we did this, we did that, and it's $15 each, and now he's not eating, and he won't even come out of his room." Which is another part of it is that they're really supposed to be off by themselves, during this time, during the daylight hours anyway, not 24/7, but during the
Right.
day. And so possibly in their dorm room. And again, there's a cultural competence part of this that I think that's what emerged to me. Maybe there's other issues involved as well, but
We could make this stuff up, but sometimes we get presented with stuff we couldn't make up.
there,
So,
no, yeah, you can't. You just go
oh,
with it as it arises. So
right. Okay. So our fifth story and our last story, our fifth story, I'm sorry, in the first block of stories, takes us quickly to Cincinnati. We have a chief who was allegedly wrongfully terminated and defamed by the fire chief.
well, he's
He
defamed
can,
by the mayor, I believe it
oh, by the
was.
mayor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, but it's sued by
Yeah, the
former fire,
defamation suit was brought by the former chief,
former
and
fire
Chief
chief. Right.
Washington, it's about 2 years ago. We covered the story. He was fired about 2 years ago, and there's a group of women who apparently were alleging that he was not doing enough to address sexual harassment. And there's an audio that you'll hear from I believe it's a radio talk show with an attorney who runs the talk show, and then a former vice mayor in Cincinnati talking about the chief's situation and calling some questions into, just what was the basis for this, and was it appropriate? And also, the chief, unfortunately, from what I saw in the news, he had put in for several other jobs, but because of the disparaging things that the mayor had said about him and different things, that he was passed over for those jobs, which he was, more than qualified for. So it went beyond just the wrongful termination into almost interfering with the business relationship. So
Well, yeah, and again, and there's so much of this stuff we don't see that happens like this.
yeah.
Um, okay. Now for getting back to the big ones, so to speak, I want to go to Illinois, and I want to caution everybody. State driving laws and the protections they offer to emergency vehicle operators differ greatly, right? They
Believe me.
differ from, you shall come to a complete stop at every red light or stop sign, right? Which is the NFPA,
Mhm.
and are unquestionably the safest practice.
Right.
Or some are slow down as necessary, but drive with due regard. In
Mhm.
New York, different than this one. We'll talk about this one. In New York, they have the slow down is necessary, drive with due regard. But if your lights and sirens are not activated at the time you're running a red light or stop sign, you automatically lose the case. You are deemed, says the state's highest court, reckless. So here we have the complete opposite. We're in Illinois, where they have a very generous to the emergency services vehicle and driving statute. And the court, I mean, the facts are very simple. The court is an appellate court. They affirmed a trial court, and the trial court dismissed the suit against a driver who was driving an ambulance and did not have allegedly lights and sirens on. Well, it was claimed by that there were no lights and sirens on,
Mhm.
and that they didn't stop at a stop sign,
Mhm.
and then an accident occurred. But under the court found that this state's Tort Immunity Act barred the claims unless they were willful or wanton. And so they then said, okay, well, can we amend our complaint to add, I'm presuming, willful or wanton, almost
Right.
intentional reckless conduct, as that's what it
Right.
would be.
Right.
And the court says no, because there are no facts that would lead us to that conclusion. But here's what I find interesting about this. It may be the right holding, right? I'm
Mhm.
not going to talk about Illinois law, but it's the wrong holding if this person blew through a stop sign with no lights and sirens, right? Going, I mean, I can't come up with any good driving practice where you can run a red light or stop sign. Now, if they stopped at the stop sign and then proceeded and then hit somebody, that's a different issue, right? But if you blew a stop sign or a red light and you didn't have your lights and sirens on, you probably should lose, right? That is not acceptable conduct. I don't care under what state law, right?
Yeah, no,
Forget,
I hadn't thought about it that way, and I think you got a good point. Um, to me, you can run a stop sign if you know it's a stop sign and you intentionally run it. But there's also a negligent component to it where you didn't see it, and that's just carelessness.
right.
And that's in the nature of negligence. So I hadn't taken it to the point where if this person did not have his red lights and siren on and knew there was a stop sign and intentionally ran the stop sign, that could be recklessness. That's not what was alleged, though. It was really alleged that he just failed to stop in a negligent manner. And the court didn't allow him to go back and sort of replead not just the counts, but you couldn't go back and replead the facts to support that as
Or
well.
the burden, or the standard being that he was willful, wanton, reckless, right?
Right.
And yeah, judge just said you have no facts to support that.
Right. And we're not going to let you go back and reallege your factual allegations. So I think that's the other part. But the court agreed, and I think it's interesting. I know we had a little bit of discussion. I think it was on LinkedIn or Facebook on this over the last couple of days. But I think it's interesting to understand, and you hit it right on the head, that it's different state by state. And one of the firefighters that posted his states. And I said, well, that's your state. It's that you have to drive with due regard. Okay,
Right.
well, okay, that's what it is in your state. But here, and you should be driving with due regard. By the way, you shouldn't use a case like this to say, hey, we can blow stop signs.
Right,
No.
right.
But
And
basically, yeah. Go ahead.
no, so I'm having hard time trying to figure out, was there a patient in back? Or they were going to a patient,
I
and
think, yeah,
they
I
were.
think so. If you read the decision, yeah, I think they were
Yeah,
transporting to the hospital.
right. It looks like, yeah, it was either going to a call or to the hospital, right?
Yeah.
But so they do have a patient in back. They are with an emergency, or presumably what a member of the public would perceive as immunity, an emergency. But if you accidentally ran a stop sign, well, again, this is the state's law, right? I'm shocked if you don't have your lights and sirens on and you didn't
Well,
mean
I
to
think
run
he
the
had his
stop
lights
sign.
on.
That should be
I'm looking.
negligent.
I think he had his lights on, but he may not have had his siren on. So,
Yeah.
which we see, unfortunately,
Yep. I get it. And I
unfortunately or
get it at 3
unfortunately.
a.m. You don't want to wake Mrs.
Yeah.
Jones or her neighbor, Miss Smith, up. But
Yeah.
any event, so everyone, when you're looking at that case, be very careful, because that would not carry the day in many other states. Right.
Mhm.
And I think you and I both agree that stopping at every stop sign and red light, making sure you have control of all the lanes to the best you can, is the best practice.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And, you're in a situation where it's indefensible. If you had a red light or you had a stop sign and you get in an accident, it's pretty much, it's not totally indefensible, but for immunity protection,
yeah.
you're going to be liable. And
Right.
and you shouldn't hang your hat on the immunity protection. Say, oh, well, I can do it because I have immunity. No.
There's exceptions to every immunity statute, right? You may have, but I haven't seen a state with a blanket. Anytime you're in an accident, no matter what you did, intentional or not, you're off the hook. I've never
No, in
seen a
fact,
statute.
many states have almost the opposite. They have a law that has a blanket protection for what happens at a fire,
Right.
but it has an exception for motor vehicle accidents.
Yes.
I think that the legislature is sending a message that we don't want you driving like cowboys. That you need to manage your urgency and get there safely. So.
Yep. Okay, our next case is an FDNY EMS case. And it's really the purpose or the benefit of this case when you provide it, I think, is so people understand processes. So here, they haven't filed the lawsuit yet. And as against municipalities, you have to serve what's called a notice of claim or a notice of intent to sue. It's a document you serve usually within 90 days of the accident, putting the municipality on notice, but it comes before the actual lawsuit, and it allows the municipality to investigate and have a little deposition, etc. So here we have somebody who hadn't yet filed the complaint, but wanted to use discovery statutes before filing the complaint. Now, personally, I think would be the right holding. Allow someone to conduct discovery, and there are times I think I've been allowed to do it once in almost 30 years. It's not allowed. And you can see in this case, the court's not going to allow her to do it. But trying to conduct discovery before a case starts. And I think that's what's interesting that most people should know. Typically, and the court says this, at least here with New York, if you don't know the wrong that's occurred, you can't start an investigation to try to figure out what it is. And I hate that holding. Right? I mean,
and I think the reason why they have this, and I think the court would have granted her the ability to discover if she was a legitimate party. But because the estate had not been created, because the infant who died had been removed from her custody, and the child was actually in state custody, that I think that part of this is that the mom did not have
you have to have
standing.
what's called letters testamentary saying that you
Right,
represent the estate.
but she didn't have standing to bring the suit. And one of the things that I first became aware of this, probably around 1990 or so, it was in the 90s, where it was applied after a fatal fire. And someone dies, and now they want to get in there and examine what caused the fire. What was it, the refrigerator? Was it the stove? Was it a toaster? What caused it? Because then we want to preserve all that so we can figure it out, so we can go after whoever was responsible for the fire. And we have a lot of that information. And today, back in the 90s, that's one thing. You really want the scene preserved, and you want to have access to the scene and all that. But today, you think about all of the information that individual firefighters may have, the apparatus may have in terms of vehicle data recorders, but also the computers, the tablets that may have the GPS, the route. Did the fire truck actually get to the scene properly, or did they take a wrong turn? Or, all of those things today that we have that data. And when you get one of these protective orders, it certainly will go to the fire department, but the firefighters too, they have their phones that has GPS tracking on it. We may be under an obligation to preserve that information. There's a lot, there's a lot. So this law that I think has been on the books for a long time and serves a legitimate purpose, can really come back. And I think most fire departments are not really prepared. I'm sure FDNY is, but they're not really prepared for securing all of that evidence when you get one of these protective orders.
Yep. Yep. And it's interesting. You say, well, she doesn't have standing because she's not the estate rep, but standing is a question once you file the lawsuit. So it's kind of circular, right? I mean, you're right.
But they call this a petition. They call it a petition, but it is a lawsuit. It's a cause of action.
It is.
So they call what they call it a pre-action discovery, but it is a lawsuit. But at the end of the day, the court basically said we're going to order the documents preserved. Everything that you've requested is going to be preserved, but you don't have the ability to do the discovery because you don't have standing.
Right.
So
it's a more a lawyer interesting issue, but it is very
well. It has that connection now, because if you're in the front office of a fire department or an EMS agency, you have to be prepared for this.
Oh yeah.
And ready to document this. And the thing that got me, particularly in a case where someone dies on an EMS run, is we may want to look at the GPS data on someone's phone and if maybe the apparatus took the long way, or maybe they didn't get right out, or whatever it may be. But why did it take so long? And
how do you preserve that? It's funny. Some of the stuff, and I don't even know how you preserve it.
That's my point. Yeah, that's my point. And are we prepared for that? And I've got a couple of cases where this kind of information has been important. One out of Las Vegas, and that kind of capturing that kind of information. There is software that you can do a data dump on it. Um, Another reason why I mention this is the city and the union, where there is a union, need to get together because it's in your mutual interest to have a system where you can basically document and secure this information and basically have some sense of security that it's not going to be misused and only given out in response to a court order to protect your members, to protect the department.
Right.
And we don't want anybody being accused of, damaging evidence or
Which is why, if you're a
destroying evidence.
must-have policy subscriber, you have received the litigation hold. I think.
Yep.
I think we've sent it out yet.
Yes.
The litigation
Yes. Yes.
hold policy, which is critical for you to have for this
Yeah.
exact reason.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Boston. I am shocked at this. I am not at the holding. The holding
Right.
is so predictable if you just listen to every other one of our, sets or videos we've done every year, every week. But so I'm reading this. I'm like, there's got to be a twist, but this is just so run-of-the-mill Curtin Brad stuff. So what we have is very simple. We have an individual who in social media or writes a letter, I guess, but nonetheless,
Email, I think.
email, right, sends an email about a dangerous sidewalk condition, meaning matter of public concern, dangerous sidewalk, right? Have clearly nothing to do with just inside the department, it's a sidewalk. And he does so under his union, right? He's not the spokesperson, but he did receive approval to be the spokesperson on this issue. And he does it all under the guise of the union, which is not the fire department. We could just replay the numerous times we've done this, and he gets suspended. Which is insane that the city of Boston, we know the head of their HR.
Mhm.
I meet her at all the time at sessions or every so often at sessions. And, she has nice things to say about you, which tells me she doesn't know you very well. No, but I'm surprised that this would happen because it's obviously a matter of public concern and he's obviously doing it as a union. So I'm not sure which factor the city would have screwed up, but they filed a motion to dismiss. And the judge found, he plausibly spoke as a private citizen on a matter of public concern, not as a firefighter. Not plausibly, he absolutely, there's no question. You do it under the union, with your union, identify yourself as a union. He's the union. That's not the fire department. And the city of Boston knows better than this. They're much smarter than this. I thought it was going to be some podunk, who maybe didn't know, but come on. Anyway.
I don't get it. I don't get it. And I also, one of the things that I think is absent from this that chiefs have to be aware of, city managers have to be aware of, is the right to engage in concerted activities with your coworkers and how disciplining somebody for union activities can be an unfair labor practice. Now, maybe they're pursuing that in a different forum. I don't think it necessarily has to be here, but it's certainly in my mind, I'm going right to, and this is an unfair labor practice, that you are punishing someone for their union activities, for advocating on behalf of their union constituents. And, that's an unfair labor practice. You're
I
punishing
never
them
thought of
for-
it, but that's a
Yeah.
great counterclaim
Yeah.
or an additional, it wouldn't be a
Right.
counterclaim, it'd be an additional claim, right?
Right. Yeah.
Violated my First Amendment rights and it was retaliatory in nature.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, hopefully we see this one just sort of fall by the wayside and, gets resolved.
Again, they know better than this. They really do. Okay. So lastly, I think, we're in New Jersey and this is a little shocking. So we have a lawsuit filed by 3 current and former New Jersey, they're volunteer firefighters.
Mhm.
I'm not going to say everything that
No.
everyone should read this, but I'm just not saying all of it. But they allege that there was a culture in Toms River Fire District. I know them, and the Silverton Volunteer Fire Company, as well as 18 other parties, that basically there was this culture with this high-ranking official where they systematically preyed on young volunteer firefighters. Preyed, how about assaulted? The allegations, all right, are that they tied them up, forced them to do some sexual acts, right? All under the guise of this somehow relates to the fire
I didn't
service.
see the tied him up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
I'll
maybe I
find it.
overlooked that. Yeah.
They were restrained and whatever is in here
Oh yeah, I
somewhere.
guess they're in training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm here. Subjecting them repeated as harassment.
Well, the complaint is there.
Yeah, it's
But he,
either there. I saw it on the
this guy
news, but
apparently was a police officer in addition to being a high-ranking volunteer. And I think that may have caused people to kind of like just, oh, we don't want to, he's a cop. We don't need to go against him. And so none of the other, yeah, I know, none of the other fire officers kind of, got him to dial it back. And some of the stuff is just over the top.
it's so hard to believe. It's absolutely believable. Some of this,
Mm.
right? They said occurred at the guy's house. Some
Yeah.
of it at the firehouse. I mean, they talked about they call it, the allegation unconscionable sexual violations at the hand of so and so.
Yeah.
Which I get it. Yeah, here it says forced. I'm not going to read the word, but and groping. They were to violent physical restraints and assaults.
Oh, wow.
They were physically
Okay.
restrained.
Yeah.
So they plead false imprisonment from
Yep.
that negligence, gross negligence, recklessness. I don't see how this is negligent. This is intentional, but and a million other violations. This is just sick. If true, we don't know it's true, but if true, and you get three people coming forward, it starts seeming like it's true.
Mhm.
Normally in the fire service, we see some bad things, right? I mean, not normally, but we've certainly seen some bad things. But I don't know of this nature where it's like group oriented, takes place in the firehouse where
Well, I don't know if it
apparently
was a group.
everybody's
I don't know
watching.
if it was group or I think there was only one person that was doing it.
No,
Uh,
no, no. But I mean, the victims, right? People are watching.
oh yeah, and well, they're right, and so you got to ask yourself, why would they look the other way at this behavior?
Right.
And and I think his stature as a police officer probably intimidated others from intervening. And depending on his personality, some people have that kind of explosive personality where you go against them, you're going to be their enemy for life, and nobody wants to go against them. So
Okay,
he
but
ends
there's a
up.
point. I mean, there.
I got it. I got it. I got it. And sitting where you sitting where I sit, we can see that objectively. But I think the people on at sea level here that we're dealing with this may have been intimidated by him. And it's not a defense by any stretch. It's not gonna carry water here on a defense. But certainly, I think it explains how something like this could happen and the importance of having the integrity to stand up when you're seeing something like this. And certainly from the boss, the top boss, the fire chief's perspective, you can't let it go on,
Yeah, I mean,
no
people got
matter
to
who it is.
realize why we're here, and we're here to stop people from harm, not to cause
Yeah,
them harm. If you see the fire chief or God himself or herself, physically, sexually abusing someone, you report it.
yeah,
But obviously, since some of them were former volunteer firefighters, this went unreported for a while.
yeah.
I mean, that's not to mention all the counseling these people probably need. So,
Mm.
I think that is it for this week.
I think it is. I think it is. So that'll kind of wrap it up for another week. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. We're doing well on our subscribers. We're getting great numbers on folks watching. So we really appreciate it. But the more subscribers we have, the more likes we have, the more the algorithm is going to pick us up and share us with others, and others will be aware of what we're trying to accomplish here. So we really appreciate your support in that regard. And that's going to do it for another edition of File Our Roundup.